Hello trader, this is a complete multi-time frame analysis on dollar yen and GBP JPY. Let's see what kind of trading opportunity we have in both of this instrument on the lower time frame. Now before we look at potential entry opportunity, let's quickly look at the highest time frame, looking at the monthly chart, starting with dollar yen to see what kind of price action currently we have. Starting with the monthly, we can see that dollar yen, after break of this monthly high, the price has got a strong rejection. With that rejection, the price started to drop again. And what I think, the dollar yen may continue to drop to this support level or even breaking below further to the downside to create a new lower low. If we look at the weekly perspective, we can see that from the weekly there is a gap open here, creating series of lower high with that gap open, and the market approaching this important weekly 20 EMA. As we can see, the price has made this move, the price in a sideway for quite a long period of time, and from that zone it started to break with a gap open. We could see that dollar yen is coming back here to this 20 EMA from the weekly perspective. If we look at the daily chart to see how the market is evolving, we can see that there is a daily doji with a gap open, and the market is forming series of lower high in that area from the daily perspective. And we can see the price started to melt to the downside, as we can see that there was a head and shoulder on the daily on dollar yen, and break up that head and shoulder, multiple daily sideway movement. The price tested this previous support, which is turning resistance, and from that zone with a gap open, the price started to drop again. As we can see the price breaking from that structure, we could see that dollar yen coming back to that support level where there is a high liquidity, expecting for this market to continue to drop to the downside to create a new lower low. If we look at the intraday perspective from 4-hour time frame, we can see the dollar yen, after forming series of lower high here, this is the current session candle, form a strong bearish engulfer. Now with that bearish engulfer formation, we can see from this resistance line on dollar yen, there is a, we can see this is a resistance here, a big drop followed by this pullback to the resistance, and we can see there is another drop followed by pullback to the resistance. The market, whenever reaching that resistance, getting a rejection, sign that the sellers becoming stronger and stronger, the buyer getting weaker and weaker, and we may see that ultimately dollar yen dropping back to that support level where there is a high liquidity or even further to the downside. So the potential for dollar yen to break below, as there's a 4-hour bearish engulfer is being formed, we can expect further a downside here. So any pullback on the lower time frame on dollar yen, we may look for potential selling opportunity in this market to this level or even further downside. Now let's look at GBP JPY to see what kind of trading opportunity we have, looking at the monthly chart again to see overall picture. Now as expected in our weekly forex forecast as well, GBP JPY after this retest of this monthly resistance started to drop. And if we closely look at, we can see this is the almost the end of the month. There is a long wick at the bottom, and the potential for wick fill is higher on GJ. Therefore, the bias is still to the downside, and I think that the price ultimately could drop back to this monthly 20 EMA along with the previous monthly low, which is a very high liquidity zone. Dropping down to the weekly chart to see how the market is evolving, we can see that from the weekly perspective, this is the double top formation here on the weekly on GJ. And what we can see that this is the weekly bearish candle formation, expecting GJ to drop again back to that support level where there is a high liquidity. From the weekly, expecting it to come down here as the market tested this resistance. We could see that GBPJPY coming back here to grab the liquidity. Dropping down to the daily chart to see how the market is evolving, we can see that with this daily strong bullish candle, the price has reached that resistance line where there is a liquidity zone here, which is a support here, resistance here. And with that support down resistance from the daily, after retest, we can see there is a strong rejection. There was a gap open early today with the weekly and daily open. That gap open might give GJ to further downside to the momentum for further bearish pressure. Therefore, on the lower time frame, we can expect GBPJPY to remain bearish. Now, looking at the intraday perspective here, 4-hour time frame, we can see that a potential bearish engulfer is being formed after a retest of this gap. 4-hour time frame on GJ, forming a bearish pattern here, expecting for this market to retest and then to drop again to this liquidity zone. So this is where on GBPJPY, as soon as we will find suitable entry, we will be looking for going short with a high probability trade setup. Traders, if you enjoy this free education and analysis, make sure you give a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done yet. Thank you, and I'll see you soon in my next analysis.